Oh, baby, I'm back just in time. Elsa's back just in time, and it's time for another weekly live stream, a nice little Friday live stream. Things getting a little bit more quiet since the explosion of a few days ago. Realistically, the market happens in a couple days, and then the rest of it is just waiting around, man. That's all that it is. Just a lot of fucking waiting, a lot of boringness, and a lot of people actually in the house as well. So good morning to everyone out there. I see Tanya, a new name, Matthew Smead, a very old name, QWERTY, James Hicks. I recognize all of these OGs. This is awesome, man. Calamity, and Mr. Van Doysen. Actually been seeing you in the Discord recently too, which is really, really cool. Discord is a fun place with many activities. Elsa has a nice little smoothie in the background here, I guess, to pick her up in the morning. She actually went to a very early gym session around 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. Pretty crazy, actually. How was your gym session, sir?
Pretty good, but it's still full. I'm okay.
It's full?
Full.
At this time? Okay, I would have not guessed that it's full. Well, fair enough. All right, these fins up early, I guess. Anyways, what's up, Daryl? King Sock, Guitar Wizard, Victor, Johan, or hopefully it's Johan and not Johan. And Hoy. Yeah, man. It does seem to me that we are starting to see, I guess I'm kind of giving it away right here, maybe not necessarily exactly this inverted cock and balls formation that I have on the old LARP lines right there, but it does seem to me like a good place for a bit of a pause after a pretty impressive rally, to be fair. I mean, Bitcoin has traded, what, 20,000 bucks off of the current low from a couple weeks ago, and now holding it rather high. So, you know, can it afford a little bit of a pullback? Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like full on bearish yet. Longer term, I have different opinions about that, but that is, of course, longer term. And what's up, Sinhaz? Good morning to you as well. Good to see you. Good to see all of the OGs, of course. I'm new, and that intro is amazing, says Crypto Cash. Very nice name, and indeed, that intro is very special and near and dear to our hearts. Made actually by by a former community member. Who's unfortunately not with us any longer, but we still have his work, which is absolutely fucking expert, man. I love it. I just fucking love it. Makes me happy every time I see it. Yes, indeed. We got some bull emoticons. We got some Bitcoin to $200,000 comments as well, and also we're live over here on Twitter as well for the Twitter people out there of the cryptocurrency world. I see James Hicks, Steve Dude, yeah, Cryptarded. We're all a little cryptarded, aren't we? Lazy XPT. What's up, guys? Anyways, yeah, you know, plenty to talk about in the more near term for today, but this is all going to be a setup, I suspect, for the next incoming week of price action. You know, of course, when we go over here to the weekly CME chart on the HPDR indicator, I think that this accurately summarizes, you know, what to kind of look for coming into this next week. It's like, is Bitcoin going to play between the top side of the 38.2 level and the median? Probably yes. Of course, coming back down below that median, which as of right now is about 89,000 bucks, but you know, should move up to around 90,000 bucks, I would estimate, coming into next week. You know, that would be a good bias buster for looking for maybe not necessarily new lows. I do think it's going to be difficult to make new lows from here, but you know, retest perhaps down to the low 80s if that were to happen. But that's still well and far away. And until that, until that condition is met, you know, it's just not super relevant for the immediate term. And we have Bear Nutrition in the house as well, a good friend and also the creator of the new highly esteemed price action pivots indicator right here, which is actually it's a surprisingly simple indicator in what it does. Of course, the computations behind it are, you know, complex, but more importantly, it does do the biases really fucking well. I've been adding this as like a filter for bias on all of my bots, and it has actually improved it compared to what I've been using beforehand, which was the 21 versus 55 EMA cross. Typically speaking, you know, I didn't always use exactly those periods, but those were kind of my automated way of judging, you know, a trend. This is actually going to be better, I think, just because it is earlier. And of course, moving averages switch around a little bit later. In fact, this is a good example right here. This one flipped around to a bullish pivot back somewhere around like the beginning of this week. And of course, you know, that was showing, hey, you should probably be looking for some upside as long as Bitcoin's above 83,000 bucks. Moving averages haven't crossed until about now. And I suspect that we do get a bit of a pullback into those moving averages as well. Anyways, giving away too much for today's analysis. There's plenty to talk about, especially I'm actually like rather interested to see some shitcoins today, just because, you know, how are they looking like is the real question. And I should probably also also tell you while I'm here, looking at the price action pivots indicator, you can actually try it out for free for yourself, see if it's relevant to your interests or not. Of course, as always, you're going to be the best person to decide whether it's, valuable to yourself, but you can try it for free with the same code on all of our products that you can try for free, which is trial in all capitals. And that will get you 30 days free. And, I expect if you don't know by 30 days, then I don't know, maybe you just don't know anything or it's not valuable to you, which is fair enough as well. And Peter Underwood, our lovely moderator as well. Good to see you here, brother. Very good to see you indeed. And Asti, another OG at this point, I do think it is time, another OG. Anyways, I'm actually curious today. We're not going to go into like the full analysis right off the bat, but I do want to just kind of check on the top market cap coins, just see what sort of agreement do we see, if any, around the market. It does look like most things are up, a modest percent, or more importantly, just holding their rallies that have begun earlier this week. But I do want to check in on some of these top ones here. Let's see. Just out of curiosity, because it can actually help my analysis a bit. Let's see what Ethereum's looking like. Okay, as always, very lackluster, very unimpressive compared to the rest of the market. Solana, pretty decent bounce, better than Ethereum, pound for pound here. Coming into the first area of interest. Okay, that makes sense. Same thing with XRP, a little bit more impressive, or well, actually a lot more impressive than Ethereum in this case, but still, working on perhaps an inverted cock and balls right there. Sui, just fucking vertical. This one's got to be the strongest of the bunch. It is the newest comer for the big top market cap coins. We did say earlier over the past, over the past couple weeks since April began, this thing is likely to bounce, but long term, I still remain bearish on it, meaning that, I do think that this is going to be the macro high for the cycle. But hey, can it bounce up to $3.50? Well, it has, quite literally. I actually didn't even recognize that just before the stream. It was like $3, but yeah, $3.50. Do I think it could bounce a little bit more? Maybe even $4? Fuck yeah, man. I mean, this thing is looking pretty good, at least for the short term. But again, the reason why I'm being very careful with my language actually is because there was a Discord conversation yesterday where someone had asked my opinion about Sui from, I don't know, this was maybe like a week ago or so. And I say what I typically say ever since January on Sui. It's like, well, yeah, I think that the macro top is in. I think that much is pretty fucking obvious at this point. It did play out nearly a 70% move to the downside. It's in a bounce phase, but long term, I do think that this one is still seeing the highs. But damn, that is an impressive weekly dildo right there. I do have to always, as always, mark off where my biases get destroyed. In this case, well, to be honest, it'd have to get well above where it's at right now for me to really change my opinion. These shitcoins can do all sorts of crazy shit, which is why they're shitcoins. But of course, that is also why I think a lot of people love them. They just fucking move. They move a lot, so there's a lot of opportunity, but of course there's a lot of risk as well. A lot of risk and a lot of opportunity. That's the thing. When you're new in a market like this, when you're new to trading, when you're new to investing, you only think about the potential reward and not the potential risk. And well, as I think many people have found out, there's a lot of fucking risks, and hey, myself included in that conversation as well. I had to learn that very early on within my career in a very painful and nasty lesson. Anyways, I see some super chats coming through. We'll get to that a little bit later. But we will get to it for sure. Elsa is busy in the background documenting all of this. And actually, Bitcoin's analysis today is going to be pretty fucking short. I mean, well, maybe not like super, super short, but it's not going to be super long. Anyways, I do want to do a quick check on the quantum wave bands. Have we taken any new trades in the past day? In fact, I remember that the 30-minute and the hourly both had trades open yesterday. So let's see if these have been closed or how they're doing, because that would be, I don't know, good to close off the loop right here. Let's see how long it takes to load. And again, for this, you can, of course, hey, where are my buy and sell signals? Hold on, it's still loading right here. Yeah, it takes a while for the SKX Lite to load these up, which has been a point of contention for a lot of people. Yeah, in this case, this 30-minute trade that it opened was indeed a loss. This loss is coming after 1, 2, 3 gains in a row. Before that was a loss, and before that was another couple gains, but a small loss nonetheless. And sort of a very quick realization that we had yesterday upon talking with actually some colleagues is that the quantum wave bands, when it gives you signals, bless you, sir, when it gives you signals, especially for entry, I would look at that as like a call to pay attention, not necessarily enter exactly there. I think if you wait like a bar or two, maybe even three in some cases, you're almost always going to get a better entry, but something worth testing. And of course, that's not going to be relevant to everyone. See what the hourly did as well. I'm just curious if this one also closes trade. I would hope so, but we'll see. You never know. You never fucking know in cryptocurrency land. And by the way, there's the code again if you do want to try out this or like I said, any one of the other products as well. But yeah, let's see how it loads. I remember this one opened up a trade somewhere around, oh wow, it's taken a couple trades here and another one just recently too. So yes, this one also took a small loss, actually opening at 93.4, closing at 92.8. Not terrible, but yeah, definitely a loss after, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 gains as well for this one. That's kind of weird that they're both operating in lockstep, it seems like. Anyways, this one actually did open up another long right here. Is it going to get 2 losses in a row? Well, when you do have a more long-term win rate of almost 67%, I mean, it's possible, of course. Yes, that is the gambler's fallacy. After all, it's like you get a loss, so if the odds are in your favor, then you should probably get a win. That is gambler's fallacy, to be fair. Although I do find that in the extremes, it does work quite well. But is one iteration an extreme? Absolutely fucking not. So I'll let go of that conversation. Anyways, all right. Bitcoin ain't Bitcoin. It's Vaporwell trading only. Fair enough. I mean, I actually would have agreed with that up until maybe like 2017 when it got the CME futures. But before that, there wasn't really too much that you could actually do with it. Like you couldn't really use it for anything. So, it's kind of a moot point. Anyways, let me just get my notes all in order right here. Like I said, this one's probably going to be on the faster side, but it does help kind of round out the general analysis that we've been having throughout this week, which I do think is still more or less relevant, to be honest. Anyways, I'm gonna take a sip of this water, then we'll get into it, and then we can get to the super chats and all that good stuff. Crypto Clown World says, I think you're being too bearish on the alts for the final leg of the cycle. That's when they typically do what we don't expect them to do. Like I said, I think a lot of alts will have very vicious bounces. I've been saying this for a while. I just don't think that 95% of them will not make a new high. I'll give you an example. This is one that was brought up several times to me over the past year. This one's called Arweave. Do I think that this one's going to bounce here? Do I think it's going to bounce more? Yeah, I mean, shit, this thing could bounce all the way up to $20 from $7. The problem is it going to be making new all-time highs? Is it even going to be making a new high above the 2024 highs? Extremely unlikely, man. This thing just made monthly new lows, or did it make monthly new lows? Or it's basically at the same low. So yeah, should bounce here. Again, long-term, something like this, just garbage. That is the general sort of analysis for 95% of shit in this market. But some of them will make new all-time highs. The strong ones will. Maybe that is SUI. Maybe it's not. I don't think so, but I can be wrong on that, of course. Anyways, bro, it's late as fuck. You up in the USA right now? Actually, of course not, man. I go to bed at like 9 p.m., so... this is that would be well past my bedtime. No, we're in Finland right now, so this is nice and early in the morning. Anyways, I'll go back on over here to Bitcoins. I feel like I missed something though in my general look, because I was kind of rushing through today. I had a little bit of a late start myself. Let's see. There's something here I know that I'm missing. Okay, yeah. All right. Let me just make a note of this really quickly. Fine. Okay. All right, nice. Okay. All right, let's get into it. It's everyone's favorite signal, certainly the most controversial of any signals that we have ever spoken about on this channel, and that is the moon setup over here, which you can see right in front of your very faces. Of course, this was giving us a bit of a bias towards upside when we first got the new bull moon, or whatever the hell you call it, which was back here on the 13th of April. And we are now coming very, very close to the end of that bull moon phase. And so is that a good time to perhaps pause, the current move to the upside, which has essentially been a $20,000 unabated move without any real, downside in between there since the lows were put in about a couple weeks ago. Well, I would argue it probably does at least provide the impetus for another sort of sideways consolidation, perhaps similar to what we saw back on over here. Anyways, of course, when we go ahead and backtest this, I do just want to show for all of the non-believers out there that indeed this one looks like it's probably going to work out. Again, this one opened at about 83,750, and as of right now, it is trading about $10,000 above that number. That is nearly from low to high a 13 and a third percent gain, which, if you recall, the statistics from this setup on average have given you an average winning trade of 14.25%. Would that be within the realm of possibility or within the realm of reason? Yeah, I'd certainly say so. I mean, that's very, very close to that number, and we've seen pretty much the whole time of that transpire. So to be fair, it technically will not get the new moon or whatever the bare moon is. I don't actually know, but whatever the bare moon is called, that will officially fire off on Monday. But I would say, from a timing perspective, from a percentage gain perspective, we've probably seen about the high of this rally for now, and it's probably a good idea to be looking for a bit of a pullback. On top of that, you can also very obviously see that Bitcoin on the daily here is retesting a pretty important high from early March. This was the March swing high. That was essentially a quick trap move that quickly made new lows. So that is an important point to be aware of. And, I'm not saying that Bitcoin can't break out to the upside from there, but it's likely to go into a bit of a short-term consolidation first. And now that I completely forgot to bring it up right here, but I do want to revisit some of the meta signal setups, because of course we did speak about a very short-term setup right here, the 2-hour time frame setup for meta signals, which did fire off at 95,350, which is also, or sorry, no, that is not where it opened. It opened actually about where price action is right now, 93,450. The stop loss, however, is 95,350, again on a closing basis. And target number one has actually not been hit. It got very, very close yesterday, as you can see on this wick to the downside right here, but technically did not get hit by about $150, I believe, on Binance. Target number two, again, around about a 50% probability, is 90,650, and target number three is just below 90,000 bucks. Very low probability, under 30%. But these are areas of interest for a pullback on this move that I think at least the target number one will be officially met. Typically, target number two, it, like I said, is lower probability, is around about a 50% probability, but I do think that has a good chance of being hit as well. Anyways, on top of that, I do want to combine that moon setup signal and the short setup signal here with the daily stochastic momentum oscillator, which is in a very precarious place here and very, very deep within the critical zone, which we really haven't seen levels like this hit in a long time. Last time we saw anything resembling this level was actually back during the November rally. That was when Bitcoin, was going from like fucking 70,000 bucks to 90,000 bucks in nearly one major massive dildo. And before that, you can just see that this does not happen very often, maybe a few times a year, if that. Anyways, the thing is that when you see momentum get into a level like this, it is not bear. I mean, it's not like an overall bearish thing. It tells you that there's very strong positive momentum, but it is going to be very difficult in the more near term relative to that to keep up that momentum. Thus, you typically get, at least consolidation into a pullback. And this one will officially turn down on today's closure if Bitcoin does close essentially here or lower, below 93,400. So Bitcoin's trading like 10 bucks around that number right now. So I'd say, it's probably too early to decide it, but assuming that Bitcoin does close below there, I do think that opens up the doorway for a decent correction coming into next week. Perhaps, on the greater end, perhaps back down to 90,000 bucks. But for that, I do want to reference, where is it? Where the fuck is it? It is right on over here. Yeah, there we go. I do want to reference the weekly HPDR for CME here. I always love to look at this on Fridays. And by the way, you can actually try out this thing for free as well, which is perhaps one of my most favorite indicators of all time. With that same code, Krown, all capitals. It's links in the description below and Teachable. You'll figure it out by now, to be fair. Anyways, looking at the weekly, Bitcoin is very likely, barring some sort of massive catastrophic failure by the end of today in 14 hours, 40 minutes, and 31 seconds and counting, is very likely to reclaim the median, which is just under 89,000 bucks. Assuming Bitcoin does do that, I would be looking for Bitcoin to test somewhere around the median coming into next week as a corrective target. But here's the thing, coming into next week, when we get the new open, this median should theoretically move a little bit to the upside is what I would guess. I would guess it's going to be somewhere around very low 90s. So tentatively speaking, I'd probably be looking for a correction coming into there. Maybe that starts to happen over the weekend. Maybe it happens early next week, whatever it is. My sort of synopsis of this is that I wouldn't be expecting, Bitcoin closing above those early March highs at about 95,000 bucks before first playing out a bit of a short-term pullback. And thus far, Bitcoin has been holding it up here pretty valiantly, but these things can take a few days to play out, right? Anyways, on top of that, or let me just reference my notes again, we do have one other thing to be aware of as far as corrective targets. So the 5-day time frame, actually, let me bring you to the 5 EMA strategy, because this is going to look a little bit more cleanly over here, or make a little bit more sense perhaps. Anyways, let me go to the 5-day. Yes, there we go. Okay. And so the 5-day 5 EMA strategy is just a super simple strategy. All we're doing here is we are looking at price and its response to that red moving average, the 5 EMA. Whenever Bitcoin closes above and it's in a general uptrend, well, that would constitute an entry. And whenever Bitcoin closes below, that would constitute an exit. You can see it has taken 1-2 losses recently. Before that, it has gotten some pretty fucking big gains over here. Namely, that move from almost 63,000 bucks all the way up to a closing price of 91. Of course, Bitcoin did in the interim hit somewhere around 104, 108 region. Yeah, in between there. But that is a signal that all of the long-term upside moves typically fall within the context of this setup here, where Bitcoin remains above that 5 EMA. Anyways, that 5 EMA almost always, nearly pretty much every time, will retest and reconnect with that moving average on each and every closure. So this one's going to be closing tonight, so we'll get a new update on this one coming into tomorrow, actually. And it will be pulled up, probably significantly here. Just for reference, between the prior period and the current period, it did rise up, Jesus Christ, like nearly $4,000. So, right now it's at 87,000 bucks. That could easily go up to 90 to 91-ish region. But, we would be expecting a nice wick to the downside somewhere around there, and then likely a bounce if this one is going to actually pull through and start to, really rally here. But I would say that within the context of the moon setup, which sounds pretty hilarious to talk about, and of course we could look at the fibs as well, the fib time extension, but I don't want to bore you with the same information that I keep on showing you. I'd probably be looking for a bit of a corrective period more than anything else. But here's the thing. I made a very quick and inaccurate drawing of this on Twitter, and actually, I think on yesterday's video as well. But I do want to talk about where would a short-term correction turn into a more long-term correction? Where do things start to fall apart? Well, very easily, you could look at a good bias buster. Either one, if you have it, the HPDR median here over on the weekly for CME. Again, that should rise up to about 90,000 bucks. It is currently at 89 or so. And then the other one would be just the 200 simple, which is nearly about the same price action as well. It's quickly rising up. Currently, it is 89,000 bucks. If Bitcoin starts to close dailies below these numbers, let's just say 89 to 90, then I would be looking for a much more prolonged correction, perhaps something like this. It doesn't necessarily have to get all the way down here, to be fair, but just as like a graphical representation, or a LARP line representation is what I really mean to say. Something like this, if Bitcoin does lose about 89 to 90,000 bucks again, we'll update on what the exact numbers are when we get them. That will be relevant tomorrow, and then also Monday of next week. So we'll see. If Bitcoin does lose 90, then I could easily see another correction. Maybe not all the way down here, like I said, but perhaps to very low 80s, like 80 to 81,000 bucks. But again, that's still well and far away. But I do want to also look at it from the other angle, because if Bitcoin were to put in a prolonged correction like this, that would actually actually make me significantly more bullish over the long term and make me revisit what I've been espousing on this channel, which is, I think that this cycle is mostly done in terms of going to the upside and making new all-time highs. Yes, I do think Bitcoin can make a new all-time high around like $120,000, but I don't think, Bitcoin's going to make like significantly new highs, at least at this moment in time. And of course, I reserve my right to change my mind at any moment in time and have absolutely zero accountability for it. Anyways, in this case, if Bitcoin was to go on this prolonged consolidation here, that would effectively validate the corrective target that we were looking for on the 10-day time frame, which is still relevant here, to be fair. Which is quickly rising up and probably does get around that, $80,000 number soon. Oh, and by the way, while we are here, I said I wouldn't talk about it, but hey, we'll talk about it anyways. The Fibonacci time extension also showing a date of relevance around the 1st of May, which is less than a week away. That is, about midpoint of next week. So, this has correlated really, really well with counter moves from wherever price was kind of approaching it to begin with. You can see these first couples were rallying into it. Thus, it was a pullback. This one over here, again, rallying into it, bit of a pullback and consolidation. This one was falling into it, thus a nice bounce. This one was falling into it, thus another nice bounce. Then over here, basically the high. Doesn't necessarily get exactly to the day, by the way, but gives you a date of relevance, a date range of relevance. And again, that's coming in on the 1st of May. So maybe a little bit before, perhaps Monday, maybe a little bit after, perhaps, maybe the next Monday, but somewhere around there, would be expecting a counter move. And seeing as Bitcoin is, obviously moving to the upside from this Fibonacci time extension, I'd have to imply, well, the opposite will happen, meaning that we'll get a sideways and down consolidation. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's price action. If you want just a super simple way of looking at it, I'd bring you over here to the price action pivots indicator, and let's wait for it to load. But it will give us the nice pivot as of right now to maintain, I guess, a short-term bullish bias. It's going to be 91,700. If Bitcoin loses 91,700, I'd be looking for about 90-ish to get hit, something like that. But until then, give it a chance to kind of consolidate around here. I don't think that this move necessarily happens today, but coming into, again, this weekend / early next week, that's where I'd be looking for perhaps some of these to play out. All right, cool. That's going to do it for today. As always, wish you the best of best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time. Lovely. Please hurry, Krown. What? What is it? What's going on over here? All right, cool. Krown fam feeling saucy. What does saucy even mean? That's the real question. Like, what do you know what it means? What does saucy mean? Is it like bussin'? Why is that funny? It's not funny. There's nothing funny about that.
It's like spicy.
It's like spicy. Okay. I don't fucking know. Who cares? All right. Let me get into no cap. Yes. No cap indeed. That's what I say to you, Elsa Bird. All right. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Steven.
Tell them why you called me a bird.
Why do I call you a bird? Have you ever seen, okay, people might be too young, but if you ever saw Shrek, there's a scene in the first Shrek where the princess or something, or queen, whatever the fuck, she's like singing to a bird, and then she starts singing super, super loud and super, super high pitched, and then the bird tries to copy her and mimic her, and then they just go higher and higher and higher and higher, and then all of a sudden the bird just fucking explodes into, a bunch of feathers. And that's what Elsa Bird is. She has this very high-pitched voice, which is really nice to hear during sing-alongs. Anyways, Steven Schickman says, as always, doggy, daily, weekly. Let's check it out, man. Where's my doggy? Where's my dog? Here we go. Doggy, let's see what daily looks like, right around the 55. Okay, this one not having as good of a bounce as other things, but does have that nice daily higher low that we like to see. Weekly, yeah, the weekly is the one that I think is the easier read right now. Do I think doggy could pull back down to like 17 cents in the short term, perhaps along with Bitcoin down to 90? Definitely possible, yes. But as long as it is above 17 cents on a weekly closing basis, I still think that this bounce goes decently higher. Like I've been saying for a while now, I think that this thing can go all the way up to, 25 cents, which is a pretty big percentage move from where it's at. Potentially even for more as well. But this is a bounce area. Again, I don't like calling for further downside when things are coming off of a weekly 200 simple moving average. It's more likely to have like a big bounce there. And to be fair, this thing has not really had any sort of meaningful bounce since January 13th. So I would say it's kind of due here. And I think that it's just going to take some time to play out. There's going to be twists and turns along the way, as always, but yeah, I would estimate like at least 25 cents will get hit on this bounce, and then maybe if things get really crazy, like 30 cents. But yeah, as always, it is Dogecoin, so have to be careful. Anyways, coffee, please. That was me earlier. ACHUSD, sure, man. Let's see, Alchemy Pay. All right, sounds cool. Looks very cool. Now, another chart that I don't think is going to be making new all-time highs this cycle. In fact, didn't even make new all-time highs in this past cycle, which was which is what most things did that were actually looking good. But anyways, here's the good news about it. It does have monthly higher lows, and it has not made new macro lows, so at least there's that. I do think that it's in a bounce phase, and I do think that you could get a bounce similar to what you saw here in early January of this year, similar to what you saw here in March of last year, similar to what you saw here in February of 2023. But just like all of these bounces in the past, I don't think that it's going to do anything significant. And what generally happens on this one is that it just bleeds out for the next few months following that. So, it's a very hard chart to love long term. Although, yes, I do think that it will pump more to the upside, probably in the near term here. I do think that maybe late May/June is going to be pretty decent for a lot of these alts, getting big bounces. But I really want to repeat what I've been saying for a while now. Bounce does not mean reversal into macro new all-time highs. But yeah, I mean, this thing actually has made new highs on these bounces at least. So there is that. So, if it does the same, then I guess maybe back above those January highs. But be skeptical of rallies on shit that looks like this. That's just my general take, man. Anyways, Crypto Rect RD says, "Hey, Krown, a lot of coins are headed towards Silver Cross on daily. What are your thoughts?" Of course, that's always going to be a generally good thing. But I do think, or what you typically see lean into really any major moving average cross is that there is usually a pull into that cross. So if it's rallying and it's switching into a bullish cross and it pulls back, and if it's, if it's a downtrend and it's pulling into a bearish cross, then you typically get a bounce. But this one's happening, quite far away from current price action. The cross officially happened on the moving averages, which are all the way down at $86,500. So, there is going to be like a gravitational pull. Doesn't necessarily have to get all the way down around there, but close to there. That's why I say the 200 simple on the daily is probably just an easy area to be looking at to kind of, maintain the short/medium term buys. Does it mean another round of up only after a leg down? That's kind of how I'd read it at first. That's how I'd read it at first. But again, below the 200 simple on daily closing bases, I think that we just get a much more prolonged consolidation at best. And, obviously, I guess the worst case scenario is that it just makes new lows. But, with the way that traditional markets are looking, I don't think that happens in the short term. I think that still will happen later. I think this market still has like another, we're almost at the end of April now. So I would say 2 months. Yeah, 2 months brings us into June on the lower end, and on the higher end, maybe like 4 to 5 months. So that brings us into the end of the third quarter. And I think that's about right as well. Anyways, Calamity says, "Big ups, Krown. Big ups to you as well, sir. When SUI correction 260 possible?" It's always possible, but of course the time frame on that is the big question. So let's go check it out right here. Trading at 360 right now. Very, very impressive move here. No doubt about that. I do think that this one does head a little bit more to the upside in the short term, perhaps like 375. This move is certainly much stronger than most other shitcoins that we've seen, not only today, but just in general. So I do think that deserves some sort of, recognition. But yeah, where would I be looking for a bit of a pullback? Somewhere around 375 to, let's say, maybe as much as $4. I realize that's a big range, but this thing is quite volatile. So, it's just going to imply big ranges. And from there, I'd be looking for a pullback. This thing has basically been fucking vertical since Monday? Yeah, Monday. And to put that in perspective, it's been up over 71.25% from Monday, just vertical every fucking day. So yeah, the way that you go up is typically the way that you come down. And in this case, I think that you go up a little bit more, but another easy one to be looking for on SUI on a pullback is a 200 simple. That is not, however, at 260. That is all the way here at almost 320, and rising, obviously. Do I think that Sui could head a little bit lower? Maybe like 285, 290 again, perhaps, but that would still be a higher low and it would be still far away from 260. So no, it certainly would not be my first target. And I do have to also acknowledge here for Sui, if the monthly closes anywhere above last month's high, which is 3.25, which is trading well above right now, but of course a lot can happen in 5.5 days. That would mean, again, maybe it pulls back down towards $3 or so, but I would be looking for a big bounce there and probably a try above the April highs in May if that were to happen. Again, that's a big if and then statement, but we got 5.5 days left. Again, just needs to hold above 3.25. Will it do that or will it not? Only time will tell. Anyways, let me take another sip of this. And we have Lenny. He says, hello, sir. What's up, man? Previously, you mentioned that you believe XRP will hit a new high this cycle. Where do you realistically see it going? XRP is one of the ones that I could see hitting a new high, assuming that Bitcoin does the same as well, just because it has acted as one of the more relatively strong things. And also, more importantly, has actually made new all-time highs for this cycle. The strong coins have already made new all-time highs for this cycle at some point in 2024 or even 2025. Which XRP did both, in fact. So in this case, for XRP, do I think that it could still make a new all-time high? Yes. The question is, though, where do you realistically see it going? Okay, so we're going to make an assumption here that everything continues to new all-time highs. Bitcoin to like 120 or so, which is, or maybe 125, somewhere around there. Where would I be looking for on something like XRP? I think your areas of interest are going to be somewhere around here. I think $4.50 becomes very, very likely if that situation occurs. Maybe even all the way up to 5.25. These would be like my high probability zones. Could it go more than that? Possible, yes, but that would imply that, like, at least in my opinion, that Bitcoin is headed much above $125,000, which right now is just not my opinion. So I don't think it's relevant for me to talk about. But if we do see something like that happen, then we could just readjust and yeah, it is what it is. That happens, man. In trading, in investing, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong. It's going to happen. It's okay. You just change your mind when you're wrong. Anyways, Nim says, can you check out, what is it? No, I did not do bonk derp. All right, let's look at bonk derp over here. Oh, wow, great chart. Really fucking good, man. So I'm glad that you interrupted me to show me this. This is great. This is fucking amazing one. Another chart that very obviously is not going to be making new all-time highs. Again, here is your real chart, which is down 85.25%. Wow. Let's see. How much does it even need to do in order to make a new all-time high? Oh, only 300% move. That's nothing. That is a joke, by the way, for the redacted derps out there. But we actually have very few of those people in this community, so that's pretty good. Anyways, regardless of my long-term thoughts of this one, I do think that it will, like most things, head up in the short term. This one, I think, could very easily, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that at least hit this green bar right here that I threw on there, which is like 21,000 derps, I guess. Above there, things get a little bit more shaky. I do think, if it does start to reclaim this region, then perhaps you get another like 30% move, 20% move. Is that 20 or 30%? 30% move all the way up here. But I would take it one bar at a time. But yeah, should bounce higher, I would imagine in May-ish, maybe June, something like that. I would just remain having a bullish bias again, as long as it's above the price action pivot. I expect this price action pivot to move up relatively soon, however, so should move up theoretically to, well, what would this be? Thursday's low. I would imagine if this one does start to close a little bit here or higher. Anyways, let's go on to P-Poo. P-Poo from YouTube says Fartcoin versus wrapped Ethereum. All right, based Fartcoin. Okay, I'm just going to type in that. Based fart. Okay, maybe not. Fartcoin WETH. Okay, all right, it is a thing, and it does exist on TradingView, so that's cool. Anyways, versus Ethereum, looking pretty fucking good, but that's not very difficult to do. Pretty much everything looks good versus Ethereum, which is unfortunate. Anyways, this one actually having a pretty nice consolidation at a high level here. I'm not saying that this thing's going to be resolved today, but I would be looking for it to kind of play between these zones, probably do something like this where it, it fills out some sort of an ascending triangle. As far as the price action pivots goes, this one one I would assume is bullish, set up for more continuation as long as it is above the current pivot, which is 1850 butyrols, whatever the fuck currency this one is. Below there, I'd be looking for a much more deep correction, perhaps down around here. But until that happens, this one should have a bullish bias. I just think that it spent some time consolidating within this region, fills out this space most likely, something like this if I'm to draw out the LARP lines and then tries an upside move. So yeah, man, overall, have to favor Fartcoin or based Fartcoin over Ethereum, which is pretty hilarious, honestly. Anyways, Mirror Me says, GM Krown, can you check S on the 4-hour daily? I'm guessing this is a stock. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I actually like looking at stocks more at this point, to be honest. But this one, similar to most stocks, it is in a bounce phase here. This one actually looks like a shitcoin chart, to be honest. But it is in a bounce phase. I'm assuming that the weekly will remain above 1790 by today's closure. Assuming that it does, I'd really be looking for this bounce to continue into May, somewhere around probably $20 overall. But long term, again, hard to love anything like this. And of course, you got lower highs, especially as long as you're below the price action pivot here in February. But, a perfect lower high in this trend would be somewhere around here, I suspect. So that'd be like between 20 and 23 or so. So yeah, I'd be aware of that. But yeah, in the short term, very likely bounces a bit more. I'm guessing that we have a little bit of bullish divergence here too. We do. So all good in the hood for that. Anyways, moving on, we have Coffee Please. He says, is 30 cents possible for XCN by end of cycle? Anything's a possibility, but does it have a high probability? It's a real question. And well, right now it's trading at 2 cents. So you're asking for a 15x. Wait, yes, I'm doing that right. Well, I'm glad to see that you're not a greedy person or anything like this, but I do have to say, what the fuck? Is there any possibility of 30 cents? Yes. Is it a high probability? In my opinion, absolutely fucking not. Maybe that's just me. This is a thing that was around in 2021 and 2022, did play out a 99.04 crash throughout the past couple of years, and then had 2 weeks of upside. Wow, amazing. And then immediately gave that back, but is putting in a higher low here. So it probably does get another try to the upside. That was a pretty impressive rally. So this thing can move in terms of percentage, but it's hard to get bullish on anything that looks like this long term, man. I would say the hopium of 30 cents, I mean, it's well and far away, but shit, like get above this last local high here first from January. If you can close above there, my next target is certainly not fucking 30 cents. I can tell you that. But, maybe this thing puts in a decent rally from there, like, another 50% towards 7-8 cents, something like that would make sense to me. But yeah, as it stands right now, if I had to bet on things, this would certainly not be it. But that's not me. That's for you. Maybe you like the low probability but very high reward. That's always what blows my mind about the risk reward traders. It's like, of course, probability matters, but these people don't input that into their model. It's just, oh, I'm risking this and my reward is potentially this. Well, why not just do a one risk to 100 reward? Like, what's fucking stopping you? Obviously, the probability of it, These things should be rather obvious, or I mean, I think they are kind of obvious for most people, but yeah. Anyways, JJK says, render 4-hour daily, good noob way to spot highs and lows. Well, the best noob friendly way, honestly, and I am shilling my own shit here, but the best noob friendly way is the price action pivots, man. It just tells you exactly where the last most relevant pivot is. In this case, your last most relevant pivot for the weekly is about $2.50 to the downside, meaning that you can essentially assume upside as long as you're above there. Daily time frame is going to move that number up all the way to just over $3.50, and probably does move up to yesterday's low, assuming that this thing can continue above yesterday's high soon. But yeah, anyways, you're looking at a 4-hour and a daily. Let's go down to a 4-hour. Imagine the price action pivot is going to be much higher than that. Yeah, it's right here at about 4.25, which is where I suspect the daily will move up to probably soon. Anyways, that is to say, as long as it is at minimum above the 4-hour pivot, which is 4.25, it's just an uptrend, man, and you should be expecting further upside. Now, this pivot on the 4 hour has been marched up several times within this rally. I imagine first it was over here, then here, then here, then here, then here, and now here. So, at some point it will fail, but it's always better to bet on trend continuation first before a reversal, just because, well, trends are more likely to continue. That's why it's called a fucking trend. Anyways, good way so yes, basically the way to do it, at least in my opinion, very easy and automated way to do it is just with a price action pivot mount. And again, you can try that for free, for 30 days and see if it works for you or not. But the 4 hour and the daily are going to be a bit different here. Like I said, I expect the daily to move up probably to yesterday's low relatively soon. So basically, if you're below yesterday's low, you probably got a local high in. Until then, go with the trend. Let the trend be your friend, sir. Anyways, Anderson707 says, Cardano short term, 4 hour and daily. Sure, man. Let's see. I'm going to imagine, like most things, it's probably bouncing. I recall, yeah, it is indeed bouncing. I recall this one, was coming off of the weekly 377, the blue moving average down here. Again, very, very high period moving average. So, it should bounce theoretically a lot, which, to be fair, I mean, it already has, right? This is a nearly 50% move for Cardano, which is not a super low market cap shitcoin. Anyways, you're saying that it's tracking with XRP in the news cycle. I don't know. Maybe I have no fucking idea about that. But as far as what the 4 hour and daily look like, well, I think you got a pretty obvious area to declare, an actual breakout for this thing, which would prolong the rally probably significantly, maybe even getting back up to like 90 cents to $1. And that would be right here on this major swing high, which is also going to be pretty much in alignment with that white 200 moving average. So that is about 76 cents or so, meaning that if you can close above there, I do think that this one goes on for a pretty decent rally further. But as long as you're below there, it is theoretically more likely to find that as a local high. But, based off of the weekly, which I know you didn't ask for, but I do think is important to kind of include into the greater picture, based off the weekly, it's like, this is a bounce area, theoretically should last for a little bit longer as well, as they typically do. So yeah, anyways, as far as the 4 hour goes, your last price action pivot is here, 67 cents. The general sort of analysis on that is that, I'm just going to generally be looking for another upside move as long as you're above this one. And I expect that will move up to the new price action pivot of 70 cents if this thing can actually start to close back above today's highs. And probably does even gun for that move towards the daily 200 simple. But this is the area of caution right here. Above there on a closing basis, yeah, this thing can rally, like I said, 90 cents, $1. That's a big percentage move from where it's at right now. Anyways, Mirror Me says, man, S was meant to be for crypto. SUSD? Okay. Phantom. Okay. All right. I had no idea, to be honest. Okay. Maybe Binance. This is Phantom, right? So I'm just going to type in the Phantom symbol because I think there's going to be more history to look at there. Yeah, it is the same price as well. So I would go with that. I can see that I've marked up this chart for way too long. We have another 2021 shitcoin. I can almost guarantee you this thing will not fucking get anywhere near the prior all-time high. It's still down 85%, but doesn't mean that I can't rally a decent amount here. Still got lower highs overall, as long as you're below, what is this, 26th of March. But, in the short term, does it rally a little bit more? Yeah, I would suspect so. Weekly has moved into a bullish pivot here as well. So it is defining this as a higher low. I would suspect it at least tests somewhere around these major moving averages, which is 60-ish cents. Doesn't really do anything for you worthwhile in terms of trend, but at least you do have weekly higher lows the whole way through. So could get a decent rally. But here's the thing for the weekly, the next most relevant point is basically $1. So as long as you're below $1, it could be another one of these just lower highs into a slow bleed out. But yeah, should at least get around here. If you do start to see it above there, then I would keep my eyes on this pivot right here. Other than that, there's not really too much for me to say about this thing. Let me see if momentum oscillators have anything of relevance here. And no, I don't see any divergences. Maybe momentum will be showing us one way or another. Let me bring in my momentum chart right here. Yep, there we go. All right, FTM BUSD. I'm just curious, is this one like freshly turning on the weekly? If so, then that's probably a good sign. Yeah, it is on bullish divergence, by the way, as well. Or is it bullish divergence? Sorry, actually, it's not. I stand corrected. But yes, I'd be looking for this one to put in a rally phase here. Personally, I think you'll see it above that 60-cent region, probably somewhere between like 70 to 75. I think would be the high quality play, and then from there, I'd want to see it again. To be honest, wouldn't feel too good looking at much more than that. IR Brandon says DJT stock weekly. Sure. Okay, DJT stock. Oh, it's Trump has a stock. What the fuck? Anyways. High or low in the weekly right here. So I'm always going to like that with momentum freshly turning up as well from some pretty critical levels. Looks pretty good to me. It's already had a decent move, to be fair, but I think it could go for more actually. This is a more than 50% move off of the lows thus far. So fair enough. Anyways, you are actually asking about the weekly. So let's go to the monthly as well. Yeah. Monthly, let's say, when does a month close? Whenever the month closes in 5 days, if the monthly close is above about $25, which it's decently above right now, at least for a stock, I'd be looking for this thing to rally into May, maybe even June, probably around $40, honestly. I mean, this thing can get going. I mean, this is a weekly, well, it's not a weekly uptrend, but at least you got weekly higher lows. So I'd be favoring, just general upside until then, 35 to 40-ish region. Very, very bullish if it can actually reclaim this high here from January. Again, the price action pivot of about 43.5. If it can reclaim that, then this thing probably goes on a pretty mega rally, to be honest. But one thing before the next, sir. One thing before the next, as always. And we have K, Mr. K. It's like from what is it, Men in Black. Super USDT, sure, man. Super, this one we were also looking for a big bounce coming off of, well, should be a major moving average. Oh, I actually don't have my moving averages on this chart. Let's go to this one. All right, let's see it. Yeah, coming off of the 200 simple here. Did dip below it for a little bit. That's fine. Again, have some bullish divergence and also a bit of a newer coin here too. I think that this thing actually can rally quite a fair bit. I know that Elliot has a few things up his sleeve as well. I think Super has already announced they're doing staking and all this cool stuff. But yeah, anyways, as far as Super goes, I do think it's going to get back up to 90 cents to a buck at least. That'd be the first potential area of failure. But personally, I think that this thing can go on for a pretty decent rally higher. I don't necessarily know if I'd say it's going to make new highs above the December highs. That's quite far away, but this thing could put in another bounce towards $1 to 120-ish region, let's say. And not really do anything for the long-term trend, but that's a pretty fucking big move from where it's at right now. It's like a 2x almost. So yeah. All right, nice. We have gone through all of the super chats. Let's check on what's going on in Twitter. Yeah, lazy XBT. I think he meant Sonic. Fair enough. My bad. I'm out of the loop here. Krown hates 2021 shitcoins. I hate I don't really hate shitcoins. I just hate charts that look like shit, which is most shitcoin charts. But yeah, if I see a 2021 coin that got nowhere near the prior all-time high from 2021 in the current bull market cycle, then, well, I'm going to always look at that as bad. That is a bad signal, because the strong ones did make new highs and probably maybe even make some more new highs before the cycle is over. But yeah. I'm always going to hate that. Can you do Giga Chad? Do it. How do I do it? Giga. No time frames given as always. So I'm just going to make it up. Wow. Yeah. Really fucking good, man. Only 77.5% off the highs. Great. Do I think it goes more up here? Yes, I think it goes more up. Do I think it goes up to 2.5, 3 cents? Probably yes. Do I think it could go more than that? Maybe yes. But this 200 simple moving average right here, the white moving average, let me actually just get rid of the line, but that is at about 4.25 cents. That is the high area of interest for a potential major, perhaps even macro lower high. But yeah, that still would imply, a pretty decent move to the upside. I think it'll at least hit the 21 EMA on the weekly, which is, yeah, about 2.5 to 3 cents area. But from there, it's like, I mean, look, man, this is the chart of death and decay. This is a chart of just, well, health and fitness. No, this is the chart of bad. Anyways, D Visible says, Krown, can you please take a look at Tron? Sure. On daily and 4 hour. Okay, Tron. I remember we looked at this one last week, and surprisingly, it had one of the more constructive charts in cryptocurrency land. I know that Justin Sun has been getting maybe a little bit closer to good old Trump, but yeah, as far as Tron goes, still holding the overall reaccumulation range, or the consolidation range, if you want to call it that. So I actually do not hate it here. And to be fair, this thing did make, I believe it made new all-time highs for this cycle. Yes, it did. So that is also a good sign. As far as the current consolidation goes, just a range here between about 27 cents to the upside versus 21 cents to the downside. You're pretty much in the middle of the range. So for me, that's like a no major bias zone. Yes, you do have a higher low here for the price action pivots, but it's literally in the middle of the range, and that's about 24 cents. So, you know, if you break below 24 cents, okay, expect another run towards the 200 simple, which is like 22, 23-ish region. Until then, theoretically, you should be looking for another test towards the top side of the range. I have a bit of reservations for that in the short term, but, you know, just let it go sideways. Overall, sideways is going to be good for this thing, especially as long as it's above the weekly pivot, which is, again, that lower boundary at 21 cents. You know, any sort of consolidation here should be looked at as bullish as long as that condition is met. Second that condition gets destroyed, then a nice correction, if you will. But until then, yeah, this thing's probably setting up for another move to the upside. This would be another example of something that could actually make new all-time highs. Anyways. All right. Hey, all good, Kahana, and glad that you made it to an actual live stream. That's awesome. Time Attack says, Link USDT? Sure. Link we don't look at too often here anymore because I guess people don't care about it that much, but used to be a darling of the market, I suppose, and you know, acting okay here. Definitely better than many things that we've seen today, but not like, you know, in the top of the pack, I would say. Having, again, a humongous bounce off of that blue 377 on the weekly. So, you know, this is, as always, why I do not like getting bearish into major moving averages like this on a higher term time frame until it's really confirmed that it is broken. But in this case, I think that the current rally still has more to go, probably closer to like 17, maybe even $18.50. Does, for now, at least have a higher low on the weekly, so I still like that, or probably more visible on the monthly. Yeah, more visible on the monthly. So, you know, is this going to be the next major low? Well, there's actually some good supporting evidence for that. But take it one step at a time. Of course, I do think that the next major relevant area of interest for you is going to be 1770. Above there, this thing can actually put in a pretty decent rally. $22, maybe even just tags as high again. It's going to be very, it's going to be extremely revealing as to what this market is doing in general on this current rally for most of these altcoins. So for something like Chainlink, if I saw it rally all the way up here, for example, to like, you know, mid to low 20s and then turn down, that's like your traditional bull trap region. That would be very concerning. But of course, you know, you're going to get a pullback around there. But if it does pull back into a higher low and then continue higher, then you got something really interesting on your hands, because at that point, it's very likely to take out this high. And I mean, that's going to put you into like the deep 30s, something like that. But one thing before the next, I'm probably getting a little bit too ahead of myself right here. You know, this is still very far away, to be fair. Anyways, Woot says Trump on the 1 in 4 hour. Okay, I haven't looked at Trump coin in quite some time now. Elsa is a hodler of the Trump coin, but let's see how it's not doing well. Not doing well, sir. It's going to zero. No, actually, it's going up right now. But yeah. What price did you buy it at? I think actually you bought it at a decent price, but maybe I'm not remembering properly. It's really hard for me to have any real analysis on this, but if we go to the hourly, you know, I would maintain a short-term bullish bias as long as it's above this pivot at 1180. 4 hour time frame, almost the same pivot at 1160. So I'd be having a short-term upside bias, I suppose, maybe back around like 13 and a half, $14. Saying anything more than that, though, is very difficult on a chart like this. It's a little bit too new and a little bit too shitty to have any real analysis on, besides like the most obvious, which again is, you know, as long as you're above these lows here, I would treat it as bullish. If you lose these lows, then treat it as, well, big correction coming, probably closer to $10, but Well, that is actually a pretty big move for something like this. That would be like almost a 30% move, to be fair. Blake Watkins says, since we are on the subject of shitcoins, SPA USDT. Okay. SPA is a shitcoin. Are you serious? Really? Let's see, maybe MEXC for this thing. I've never seen this one before. This one's completely new. Let's get the full. Oh dear Lord. A chart only a mother could love. But I am starting to see on a lot of these shitcoin charts that they are getting the sort of weekly and monthly higher lows. So I guess there's a little bit of hopium here. But let's see, what time frames were you looking at? Day and week. Okay. So this one trades very weirdly, very, very weirdly. But if I had to call it, I do think that this one tries again towards this week's highs, let's say 2.5 cents. I mean, it's kind of difficult to tell here, but this seems to be the area of interest for declaring an upside breakout. That's 265. 2.65 that is, yeah, and almost in alignment with that white tone and simple on the weekly as well. So this one's kind of in a precarious place because it already has tested there and it already has rejected there. I think that you might get one more test there, but if you get another rejection there that follows that test and you do not actually start to close above, let's call it almost 3 cents, then I'd be looking at this as actually a pretty nasty bull trap. But for now, should get another try up there. Just let's see if it actually closes above there. If it does, okay, got some hopium at least to reclaim this high from February, which is actually decently higher as well, above 4 cents. But yeah, I don't know what happened here, man. There's a lot of bullish impaled Anguses on these massive red dildos. So that is concerning, very concerning, if you will. Anyways, Asti says CSPR on the 4-hour and weekly. This is a stock, isn't it? No, it's probably crypto because cryptos are coming up right now. All right, Casper. Oh, great. Wow. Amazing. Just straight fucking down for life and life and life and life some more. Amazing chart. The problem with shit like this is that, yes, it can bounce and it can bounce a lot percentage-wise, but you always get this shit where you get a big move to the upside and then it quickly bleeds out, or maybe not quickly in all cases, but slowly bleeds out after that, getting absolutely no continuation. This thing has never known what it's like to live above the green moving average on the weekly, which is almost 2 cents. So I'd say, hey, if you do get another one of these pump phases, that's where I'd say the hopium target would be, basically right here. But that is highly questionable as of current, because even in the short term, this thing is struggling compared to even the most ardent of shitcoins that we've looked at today. So I don't know. I'd be very cautious with something like this. Like you're playing a very difficult game. You're trying to get one of these one-off pumps, and these things end basically as soon as they begin. So difficult game. Not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly not my game. Anyways, Andrew Dodd says, if you had to choose today between SUI and XRP, which way, for what? God. Okay, I don't want to make an example out of you because I don't want to sound like an asshole, but just take this as me voicing why this is maybe like a difficult question to answer. I have no idea what you're trying to do with this. What am I to choose today? Are you talking about holding it for today? Or are you talking about shorting it? Are you talking about longing it? On what time frame? Over what time frame as well? Are you holding this for the next day? Or are you holding this for the next week, month, year, 10 years, 5 years, whatever the fuck? It's an impossible question for me to answer. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. And also, what is your preference? Are you looking for more potential growth? Then obviously SUI is going to be a better answer just because it's lower market cap. Or are you looking for, higher probability of likely continuation? Then it's probably going to be XRP just because it has more history and has done pretty well this cycle. So very, very difficult question to answer, ma'am. I don't know the answer for you. I know the answer for me, which is none of them, actually. I would choose none of them. But for you, I don't know. And of course, I'm not a financial advisor as well. All right. Waves for Life says, fart on the 4-hour and daily. Oh, here we go. I actually added this one to my list because it's pretty fun to watch. Fartcoin. Honestly, this one does go into the more strong bucket for shitcoins that we've looked at. And as far as Fartcoin goes on the daily, this is starting to be a pretty good place around here, maybe a little bit higher than where it's currently gotten to this week, maybe like 1.25 to 130. But that would be a pretty damn good place for a local high and pullback. It's already kind of struggling on the shorter term timeframes here, I guess, but hard to be bearish on this one as long as it's above the price action pivot on the 4-hour time frame, which is 103. So that's the low of, I believe, yesterday. If it does take out yesterday's low, okay, this thing probably comes back down to $1 or a little bit below $1. And tries for a higher low there. Until then, however, as long as it is above that pivot, I would be anticipating a move kind of higher. It's not that much higher, but kind of higher, maybe between like 1.25 to 129. And that's the next big area of interest for this thing. I would really be expecting a big correction if it does get to this green line here. If not, maybe a little bit before, which, could very well be already the highs of this week, which is 120. I mean, that is quite close for a volatile shitcoin, right? Or a volatile fart coin, I should say. And for what it's worth on the 4-hour time frame, I mean, this is constructive as of right now. So yeah, I'd be looking at this as the pivot. Of course, breakout confirmed to the upside back to 120 plus if this thing can trade above this morning's, or is it actually yesterday's high, 116.5, something like that. Cool. All right, let's see. I see some G, but hold on. There's someone before you. XRen says, good morning, sir. Coin on the daily, please. Do you think it's ready for a pullback? Okay, so we've been calling for a big bounce on Coinbase because it's coming off of the white 200 simple. On the weekly, I already know where this one's at, so I look at this one daily. For a while, and we are getting that bounce, and I do think that this bounce will go higher than where it's at right now. I think at minimum you're going to see like 220 to 230. And maybe maximum, it could bounce all the way up to like 280 if things get really fucking crazy. But one thing before the next, obviously, as far as where would I be looking for the next pullback? Look, if you're looking for a pullback right here, yes, there are reasons to believe that, low 200 is going to be a pullback, but I would not be looking for a reversal to new lows or anything like this, even if it does, which I don't think that it will. I think best case scenario for a pullback, you'll get somewhere down around that red moving average on the weekly, which is currently just under 190. That will move up coming into next week's open, but, probably reconnect there. And then I think that this one tries higher, man, higher than where it's at. Not necessarily new highs. This is problematic, at least in my eyes, more long term. But it could be a big fucking move. I mean, perhaps all the way up to like 260, 270 if things really get going over the next month or two. But yeah, that's where I'll leave that one off. Basically, in other words, I think your pullback comes from higher. If you're looking for even a short-term pullback, probably tags like 213 to 215 first and then pulls back a little bit. But I'm not calling that one bearish, man. I'm not calling this one bearish in the short term. I don't think that you're going to be taking out this April low anytime soon. I think that you have a big rally first, something like this, and then if you get something like this, then you got a big problem, and that is kind of my fear with this thing. But yeah, I did actually buy a position in Coinbase again before I had lightened up on my personal long-term load a little bit. That was back on over here in February. It was on this massive red dildo coming back down below 250. That was the big area to be aware of. Before that. But I did add around the 200 simple again. So I did trade around this position a little bit. All right, let's see. Some G says, NVIDIA on the daily weekly. Have a great day. You have a great day as well, sir. Let's look at NVIDIA. We called a top on this one a while ago, but I don't know if this is a cycle top. Yeah, this one's also in a bounce phase as well. And I do think that it will head back around like 120 to 125 region. Other than that, the problem with a lot of stocks and Bitcoin as well is that coming off of a deep retracement like this, you always have to think that you always have to be on the defensive, or at least I always have to be on the defensive of, okay, shit, is this thing going to have a bull trap? And where would that bull trap likely be if it's going to happen at all? And for this one, it'd be anywhere between like 125 all the way up to like 135. So I do think it's going to rally in the more near term. Yes. In May as well. But that would be your traditional sort of bull trappy region. So that's kind of where I'd be a little bit more cautious. Like I said, I'm not willing to, when I look at the monthly, I do think that this one's put in a top for a long time. I really do. Despite a big bounce incoming, this is multiple drives of bearish divergence on the daily. This is also my issue with Bitcoin. Like, I cannot ignore these things. Of course, doesn't mean it's always gonna be right, but shit, like, have these rules for a reason, man. When you see divergences like this all the way up to a fucking quarterly, like, don't know how much more this one really has to go. But yeah, anyways, someone new in the Krown cave destroys dreams. Someone gets wrecked. Yes, indeed. The initiation hazing. Exactly, man. We say it with love. Look, if you love someone, you should tell them the truth, or at least what you realistically think. Not necessarily that you're always going to know what the answer is, because of course it's impossible. What? Elsa says, are they fat?
No, like, you should tell them the truth, like, if they're fat.
Well, sometimes we don't tell people the truth, but we also don't tell them a lie. We just, because we want to avoid a situation. No, you don't need to tell everyone who's fat that they're fat, sir. You need to go into your fucking elevator and see your fat neighbor and be like, hey, you're fat. It's mean.
But the gym is right there.
That's your comment?
Yes.
Terrible, just terrible. All right, let me take a quick look at Twitter, and then I think we can stay on for a little bit longer, and then we'll call it a day. Steve Dude, yeah, says, Krown, when you do TA on shitcoins, does token inflation ever factor into your calculation? I mean, I'm obviously like not looking at the tokenomics of these things when I'm looking at the chart, but of course the chart will reflect that in some way. So I'm not directly looking at it, but tangentially, sure. I mean, it's going to be included in the price after all, anyways, right? That's where everything's going to reflect with an actual, objective dollar term, which is why we like it. Blake Austin says, hey, Krown, could I get you to do some TA witchcraft on stock X, US Steel? Actually, sure. Let's see. A commodity, huh? I think that this one's actually looking really good on this accumulation phase over a long period of time, but this is a quarterly chart. Like, look, I do think that you are going to, oh, Jesus. Okay. I must have looked at this one like 5 years ago. I do think that you're going to bust out of the top side of this at $55 at some point, or 54 and a quarter at some point. But this is a fucking quarterly chart. This could take like another year or two. I mean, Jesus, man, it's very, very long term. But in the short term, I do think you got to test around there, like low 50s from your current price of about 42 and a quarter, something like that. I'd be bullish as long as you're above, again, that price action pivot on the weekly of 35.75. I fucking love this price action pivot indicator. It just it makes things so much easier. I'm going to get so lazy with figuring these things out because I use all these damn indicators to automate it now. I've done the same with Caretaker's RSI as well. Just gotten lazy with reading these things. Anyways, Asti says XDC daily weekly looking for my exits. All right. XDC. I feel like we looked at this one earlier, but maybe it was just another X something rather. Yeah, this chart doesn't look familiar, so perhaps not. I would treat it as a bounce phase as long as you're above the weekly pivot, which is a little over 6 cents. It doesn't look like one of the more strong ones, to be fair, just because the strong shit right now is already putting in some pretty impressive rallies. Do I think it can continue more from where it's at right now? You are seeing a little bit of hidden bearish divergence here. I don't know if that's going to actually play out in a meaningful manner, but it could get you a pullback down to 7 cents. I don't know if that's relevant to you. But what I would say is, I do think most things are primed for at least like an attempt higher. And this is not terrible in the short term. Maybe it gets back up to like 10 cents or so, give or take a little bit from that number. So that is actually a pretty big move from where it's at right now. It's nearly a 30% move. So yeah, or actually more than a 30% move. Anyways, yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I would actually be looking, somewhere around about 10 cents, give or take a little bit. Again, as long as it is above the price action pivot here, which on the daily is 7 cents. Below 7 cents, I would just look for a correction back down to 6 cents. Maybe it just falls apart after that. I mean, the long-term history is not good. So it's really difficult to trust shit like this, but give it a chance. I would say give it a chance. Andrew Dodd says, sorry, my man, I did mean long-term. What does long-term mean to you, sir? What does this mean? Give me a time frame. Give me a time frame. Like, are you going to be holding these things for 5+ years? Is that a year? Is that like a month? I don't know. But you don't need to send in another super chat. You can just post your response in the chats on YouTube, and I'm actually watching it specifically right now, so I can answer you as soon as you hear that. But yeah, let's put these guys side by side. Overall, XRP is going to be the better chart, but SUI has more potential. Let's see. All right, Mr. Van Duysen is looking at AI XBT. So this is, I think, AI agents, which is a pretty good narrative right now. But maybe the narrative's already played out. Who knows? Anyways, as far as chart goes, narrative is dead, I guess. Wow, that was unexpected to see, just because I thought AI agents were the new topic of obsession for this cycle, but perhaps not. Anyways, I do think that this thing's getting another one of these pump phases, but just like the other pump phases, they quickly fizzle out. Does it get another try at 14 cents? Probably yes. Does it go a little bit higher? Maybe. If it does, like 18 cents, I would say at most. But whether it tops out at 14 or 18, I think is irrelevant. The long-term direction seems to be quite clear. Still waiting on Andrew Dodds there, but I'm still watching, sir. Hopefully he gets the message ASAP. Hubris the God says TMC stock. All right, let's check out TMC. What is this? The metals company. All right, very appropriately named. Very good. This is what an uptrend looks like. Also making new highs for the current trend. Hey, this is good. This is good. Now, is it ready to actually break out above the $4 range high? That I don't like calling a breakout or anticipating a breakout until it actually does happen. A lot of the time, like, what's best to be looking for is a pullback from a major region like this first, and then an actual try. But overall, I think it's setting up to break out. It's just, is it on this exact try, or does it come a little bit later? The monthly looks pretty good, to be honest. Above $4 though, this thing can rally a lot. Still waiting on Andrew Dodds there. Anyways, hood stock. Okay, we can do hood really quickly. Usually just one per comment, sir. We do have 1 million people here. This is not what you're looking at. You're looking at Robinhood. I'm actually just curious myself, which is why I'm going to do 2 for this one. But yeah, again, has a reversal here. Here's your low. Here's your higher low. Trading on a new higher high, so you got the makings of an uptrend. I think that you'll at least test this high here in the relatively short term, the basically $50 high from late March. Personally, I think things will probably just continue from there anyways, because you do have one macro long-term uptrend, and despite the April early April crash, this thing has once again found another higher low. So I look at that as strength. It also has multiple drives of hidden bullish divergence here, and even in an inverted herp and derp on the weekly as well. So if and when it does trade and close above $50, I'd say that this thing, is on a path to retest the all-time high in February, maybe even higher. I mean, it is an uptrend after all, so trend continuation is the name of the game. Juice says Palantir weekly, daily. Actually, it's like what I want to look at. Yeah, man, I've been following the stock for a while now. I finally did get a position in. I had to be a little bit more aggressive than what I wanted to, and I think if I want to get even more, I'm going to have to be even more aggressive, because this is looking very, very good. This one's had a great recovery since that early April dump. Same thing here. Multiple drives of hidden bullish divergence on the weekly RSI. Your bullish pivot on the weekly is $67. Daily pivot is 89.5. So, I do think that this thing will make new all-time highs in the next month or two, honestly. But do you get a bit of a pullback first? Well, for fuck's sake, I hope so, because I'd like to get more. I love defense technology. And I love the name of it. I love everything about it, man. I love the CEO as well. I'm falling in love with the asset, the one thing that you shouldn't do. But yeah, as far as the monthly goes, look, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than this. It's a monthly bullish engulfing massive dildo right there. If you can close above at the end of this month, $98 in like a quarter. If you do that, maybe you get another pullback close to $100, but I would just be looking for general upside, man. Probably new all-time highs. Maybe not necessarily in May, but sometime soon after that, I'd suspect maybe even in May as well. Overall, very, very strong, very, very good. Nothing bearish about this thing, even in the short term, as long as it's above Monday's low, which is $90. Let's see what else we got. All right, I guess Mr. Dodds is not gonna respond. Well, that's okay. Hopefully we got the important points out then. Anyways, does your neighbor identify as OBCD? What is OBCD? I have to ask, what does that mean? Lazy XPT on Twitter says he wants you to choose between SUI and XRP as a religion. That's what the question really boils down to, I think. Look, I'll put it this way. XRP has a lot more ardent believers than SUI. XRP has had probably one of the strongest communities for one of the oldest shitcoins of all time. That I think that does actually account for some, especially when you make new all-time highs from cycle to cycle. That's a powerful combination, of course. All right. Hey, sir, could I ask you to fill up my water? Nice. Get some Finnish water going on in this bitch. Mr. Petsov says, hey, Krown, what is your opinion on Bitcoin stochastic RSI pivot price on bi-monthly? I don't care about the stochastic RSI. I think it's a garbage indicator, to be honest. I don't see signal from that indicator. I see 90% noise, 10% signal. I've only found bad things with it. But hey, look, if you love the stochastic RSI and you're having great success with it, fucking more power to you, man. Like, that's awesome. That's great. But if you just want my opinion on the stochastic RSI, I think it's garbage. Yeah. Let's see. When you choose a chart, how do you choose the exchange to draw data from? I'm just looking for the one with the most history, Asti. So usually there will be on TradingView a shitcoin chart for the index, or it'll list it as the index, and that's going to be the longest running history that's available on TradingView for that every time. Now, if that's not available, then I typically default to the more long running exchanges because they theoretically have had the asset longer, so there'll be more price action history. But that's what I'm looking for, because more history is better for me when it comes to analysis. When I have very limited amount of history, it's very, very difficult, and it's a lot less what's the word I'm looking for? It's a lot less efficacious. How does a massage work on a skin sweater like yourself? A few bottles of mineral oil. I don't know, but my masseuse does a really good job, ma'am. I don't fucking ask. But I was thinking about that actually the last time. I'm like, damn, I got a lot of back hair, and this lady's never said a fucking word about it. But she's really, really nice. I really like her. She's honestly an awesome person. Please empower my dreams. Yes, indeed. My wet dreams, indeed. Nice one. Over your whole lifetime. I'm holding for my whole lifetime. I'm not even going to sell before I die. Or what if you sell one day before you die and you just have the best last day of your life possible? I bet that's what some of these fucking psychopaths do. Raj T says HBAR USDT. I remember this one was one of the beneficiaries of a Trump presidency, and actually looks pretty good. Even on the lower term timeframes, I think you're about to get another test towards that white 200 moving average on the daily time frame, just under 20 cents. If you can start to close above that 20 cents region, then it'd probably extend targets to, like, I don't know, 23, maybe even a quarter, somewhere around there. Yeah, I still, though, like a prior cycle shitcoin that has not gotten towards those new all-time highs, like, always difficult, man. Always difficult. But I do think your next move is up, and I don't think this current upside move is done just yet. But your next pivot to the upside to be aware of is this high here at effectively 29 cents. Above 29 cents, this thing should reclaim, or at least retest your current cycle highs, maybe even make new cycle highs. And at that point, I guess this thing really could get going. But yeah, a little bit more probably event driven for this one, because I do know it's attached to, or it did benefit in some way from a Trump presidency. I just remember seeing that early on. This thing had a big fucking rally, I think, because it's like it's an American crypto coin. Anyways, Juice says FET weekly. Okay, I remember this was quite popular last cycle. Let's see how it's doing this cycle. It was a part of the narrative, and hey, we have a prior cycle shitcoin that made new all-time highs in 2024, so we know it's not impossible. And I effectively look at this as coming off of the 200 simple on the weekly as well. And I do think that this one does trade higher here. Probably finds its way closer to the 55, which is just above $1 right now. But forgive me for saying this, man. I have a very hard time seeing this one reclaim the highs anytime soon. But yeah, decent rally from where it's at, over the next few weeks, somewhere around $1 or a little bit above $1. Other than that, I'd want to come back to it after that. I'd be expecting a pullback along the way at some point too. But as far as the daily pivot goes, that's around 44.5 cents. So, it's got some room here if it does pull back. And also now that I recognize that the 200 simple on the daily as well is coming in around 107. So if and when you do get around there, that would be a really good place for another lower high, or at least a pullback, I would say. Let's see. And we have a new subscriber. Hey, welcome to the cave, sir. If you do want this content more available in your inboxes on YouTube, then consider doing the same. Anyways, Tesaro says, so am I going to be a millionaire? Well, maybe if you start with like 10 million, then you can work your way down. No, I don't know. I don't know what the context of this conversation is, but I'm sure you will be a millionaire. I will be a millionaire. Everyone will be a millionaire. We're all going to be millionaires except for Elsa. And sorry, I don't make the rules, but... It is not because you're a woman. It's because you're a low energy Finn. Anyways. What was that defense ETF you mentioned a few streams ago? So there's two that I really like. There's two that I really like. One of them is more traditional defense. So it's not like the super high tech, new forwards thinking stuff, but it's pretty fucking good. Symbol ITA. I really like the long-term chart on this one. I do, for full disclosure, have a very large position. But yeah, this one I really like. This is like I said, more traditional defense, manufacturers and whatnot. And you can see this was a godsend on the April dump. I mean, this thing came down so fucking fast and then went up so fucking fast. It was actually insane. So yeah, the other one that I really like is more like innovation and tech. So defense technology. This one is symbol SHLD. And actually, you know how I found this one? I found it from doing these streams. That's one of the big, reasons why I do these streams. I learn a lot myself as well, because someone asked about this thing and then I looked into it. I'm like, fuck, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So I picked up, a pretty decent position in this one as well. I would like more, however. But anyways, this one is more like innovative tech. They hold Palantir, for example, as like one of their biggest positions. So I guess I do actually own quite a big position in Palantir, from that angle. But yeah. Yeah, man, these are the two ones that I watch, and then I watch some of the individual stocks, which you can probably figure out by looking at the watch list. Or actually, no, you can't even see the watch list. Ooh, it remains a secret. This is good. This is good. All right. FD Lux says, hey, sir, can I get AIOZ on a daily, weekly? Okay. AIOZ. Okay. AIOZ network. Let's see. Okay, so it did make new all-time highs this cycle, even made multiple new all-time highs in 2024 and in 2025, so it's good signal so far. Yeah, weekly, we've seen the same sort of look on many altcoins today, right? Weekly is effectively coming off of the 200 simple. I think that you're at least going to find your way somewhere. Oh, I've literally already circled it off. I don't know when I looked at this thing last, but somewhere around here, like 50 cents, let's say, give or take a little bit, on this rally. That's a weekly time frame look though, so that can take a while to play out. On a daily, you probably get some pullbacks along the way, maybe even more in the short term here as well. But I do think that you'll head somewhere up around here. 200 simple on the dailies all the way at 60 cents. So let's just say somewhere between 50 to 60 cents. I think that's a pretty high quality area of interest. Can it go for more from there? Sure. But I'd want to see it in the interim first, because, we're getting a little bit too far ahead of ourselves. But that much is clear, in the short term / medium term, this thing's in bounce / rally mode first is what I'd say. Essential says, shout out Elsa. You got a shout out. How do you feel about that? Holy shit. All right. Let's see. Vivek Sharma says, bro, I have shorted half of a Bitcoin from 90,500 yesterday. It came till 90. Wait, what? How did you short 90,500 yesterday? Oh, it came yesterday to 91,600. I'm regretting to cut in some loss as it went back again. So what scenario you think it will be in all time frames? Okay, like I have to literally go from the 1 second time frame all the way up to the 12-month time frame. That's that seems like it's going to take a long time, man. Look, as far as I guess your question boils down to, am I about to get fucking wrecked? Look, I think again, Bitcoin is getting towards its first pullback. I think it happens relatively soon. Latest, I think it starts early next week. Earliest, I think it starts, basically today. But as long as you're between Wednesday's high of what is this 94,700. Or sorry, as long as you're below that, I'd still look at this as more likely to play out a pullback and likely fulfilling, at least back down to $90,500, which would be your entry. Could things fall apart more than that? We've already gone over this in the beginning of this video, so you can scroll back there. But ultimately, I still like this area as a high probability area for a pullback. Now, does that mean that you can get another test back up towards $95,000 in the short term? Yeah, absolutely. But I'd still be looking for a rejection there. And a pullback first before any sort of potential major breakout, which does look actually quite likely. Just I think that takes a lot more time, man. As far as the lower term timeframes go, I think that you will test around $95,000 in first before anything else, something like this. But ultimately, that doesn't do anything. That should be, theoretically, if you set up this trade properly, that should have been your stop loss. But of course, you entered at 90,500, which is quite far away from that. So I don't know how reasonable that is for you. It wouldn't be for me. To be honest, if I was in your position, I would take the loss right here and then just reposition when I get something more appropriate, and maybe like plan it out before I actually take the trade as well. That would be maybe a good idea. I don't know, but yeah, sorry. I don't mean to be chastising. But yeah, in your position, man, look, when you get into a bad position like that and you didn't really like plan out the trade to begin with, cause like where would be your stop loss? You would have had this answer from me already. I imagine in your message. I think it's a better idea to just cut the loss short and go back to the drawing board. If you do want to reposition, I think that you get another short opportunity around $95,000, but it's not a guarantee. It's just a setup. It's not, nothing's 100% in this case. I just like the sort of background picture for a pullback coming into, like I said, early next week, most likely. So yeah. All right. Jogan says, thoughts on PP from here? Depends who you're talking about. PP. Short term probably tries another upside move. I don't know what time frame you're going off of, but again, looking at the weekly, I do think that this thing is going to probably reclaim these moving averages and actually work its way up a decent amount. I think I would actually move up this red circle area of interest, maybe closer to here. Oops. Again, this would be upon reclaiming these major moving averages, which I think you will test in the short term. Probably play out a pullback as well in the short term, and then try for that next move to the upside. But, well, yeah, that's really all that I have to say about this. More long term, I think that you have a cycle high end here, but it doesn't mean that I can't rally up like a big amount. Shit, like I said, this thing could rally up all the way, towards this red circle. It'd still be basically a bull trap lower high on a monthly, but that's a big fucking move, right? That's a big fucking move. So maybe it's relevant to you, maybe it's not. Derek Delgado says, I feel I've missed out on the pumps. Oh, this is already going poorly, sir. Can it be wise to wait till bear market? I'm looking forward to it. How long can it last? And what can be bottom Bitcoin? All right, so let me just get out my crystal ball, man, and figure it out. Look, of course, I want to preface this thing by saying, hey, there's no one fucking knows, and I am also no one. I don't actually know exactly what will happen. Nobody knows with 100% certainty what will happen. Okay, this seems to be a big point of contention on the internet, but I can assure you that even for the best models, there is always going to be a low probability but relevant probability of a black swan event happening, which is just a completely unforeseen event which does something completely out of the ordinary. Anyways, with that said, you feel like you've missed out on the pumps. Well, that's because you're probably spending too much time online on social media and looking at other people's P&Ls, which you don't even fucking know is real or fake. And also you don't know like how many times that they fucking tried it and got absolutely blown out. All of these things, you have no idea. So first remind yourself of that fact. You're not missing out. You're just yourself. And that's fine. Like you didn't lose any money. You lost some opportunity there, but you didn't lose any money. So you're still in a position of power. The question is, what do you want to do with that? Well, if you want to wait until the bear market, well, we need some actual confirmation that a bear market is happening. I think that things are, like I said, on like a time schedule here as far as maybe September, at the latest, like late September. But you know, I can be wrong on that for one. And two, like how high do you things get, if they even get higher at all between now and then? I don't know. But yeah, I'm looking for more demonstrable signals, some objective signals that the highs are in. For now, I just have preliminary signals like divergences on very high term timeframes, like momentum offset is turning down on very high term timeframes, and like volatility indicators hitting some extremes on the current highs, which typically a sign as well. But these are not like full on long term validated just yet. Anyways, yeah, so, I mean, if you're going to wait until a bear market, well, you don't just wait until the start of the bear market, you wait until about the end of the bear market. So from whenever time Bitcoin tops, just fast forward out like about 10 months to 14 months from there. And that's about the time that you should be buying. And it's going to be slow, and it's going to test your patience, and it's going to make you think along the way that it's never going to go up ever again and blah, 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 blah. But it just takes a lot of patience. I can assure you that with a little bit of patience, just wait for that. Wait for the top to be put in. It'll be very fucking obvious when it does happen. And after that, well, you can just, like I said, fast forward out, I don't know, 10 to 12 months. Don't fucking buy anything for at least 10 months, and maybe even wait all the way up to like 14 months. And that's going to be about the time where you can safely get into spot positions on even your most favorite shit. Well, probably not your most favorite shitcoins, but the new ones. The new ones are good during those times. All right. Let's ride on from, is this Denmark? We love Denmark. Hey, Krown, longtime viewer from 2019. Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. A fast TA on Neo. Wow. Okay, so you really are from back in 2019, man. This is a ticker I've not seen in. I feel like I haven't seen this thing since 2018. Yeah, so this is what your traditional shitcoin chart looks like, right? You get your first big pump up here. This is 2017. Comes all the way back down. Gets your second pump over here, a lower high, to be fair, but a big pump nonetheless in 2021. And so far during this cycle, it has had absolutely fucking nothing. In fact, it continues to have a monthly downtrend. So I'd have to say this is long-term, one of the worst charts that we've seen today, just because it's been around for so long. Now, in the short term, do I think that there can be a bounce here, it is already bouncing, but do I think it could go higher? Yeah, $7 isn't asking for too much. If you get another one of these like quick pumps that, pretty much always fail for this thing, I'd be looking somewhere around the daily 200 simple, which is right now around $11 to $11.50. So I'd say that would be like the hopium target. But for me, you already know this because you've been around for a while. I cannot personally get bullish on a chart that has, or call the reversal on a chart that just has every higher term time frame, weekly, monthly, quarterly, in downtrends. So yeah, I think best case scenario, you rally a little bit up there or around there in the short/medium term, and then fail, and then come back down probably to new lows, which is actually what it's coming off of right now. But yeah, I mean, is it in a bounce phase right here? Yeah, I think so. Can it bounce up to like $10-11? Sure. Can it bounce all the way up to 15? I think that's asking for a little bit much. Daily 200 simple, I think, yeah, a little bit better there. Around 11-12, so somewhere around the early double digits is where I'd be keeping an eye on if you do get another one of these pump phases. All right, let me take another sip of this water. Then we got time for maybe a couple more just because my throat's starting to get really fucked right now. Crypto Bro has sent in a super chat, but no message, sir. All right, let's see what the message is. Cow hourly and Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this thing? Okay. Cow protocol. All right, this one's going to be good. As always. Well, at least it made a new high. So there is that. Hidden bullish divergence coming off of this low right here. I mean, I think most things are still in a bounce phase overall, which likely does carry it higher. If this thing gets a decent pump, I'd be looking somewhere around low 40 cents. But very skeptical of a chart that looks like this as always. This is the Burj Khalifa chart of death. I mean, that's just a fucking nuke chart, honestly. But, are you more likely to bounce here or fall to the south side? I'd say you're more likely to bounce here. Your daily price action pivot is 26.5 cents almost. So as long as you're above there, I'd be treating this as, hey, it's going to go higher in the short term. Just long term, well, you already know. But yeah, I do think that you're in a bounce phase. I think best case scenario on a bounce, you get somewhere around 50 cents. But, I'd go out on a limb here and I'd also say something like this, probably not going to make new all-time highs this cycle, if I had to guess. Down 84.5% almost from the highs. So quite ugly, but it can bounce a lot to the upside. It can bounce a big percentage basis to the upside. So yeah. All right. Poopster says Neo is a 2017 ICO shitter. I can't believe it's still around. Do you remember what Neo was called before Neo? That's how you know if you're a true OG at this point. It was called ant shares, actually. And I remember I was on this forum and people were talking about buying their ants. It's really, really weird. Arweave, it's garbage. Also stop spamming, sir, because that's annoying for everyone else who's normal and doesn't spam. And also the Arweave chart is absolute dog shit. Terrible. One of the worst charts that we even looked at earlier today as well. In fact, I'll look at it just again, just to talk some shit about it. Yes, it is going to bounce here. Yes, it's likely to bounce probably a decent amount, maybe even more than doubling the current price. Long term, this is absolute fucking dog shit. And you know what? It gets the nuke of the day. We're fucking nuking it, baby. We're fucking nuking it. Had enough of this stupid fucking chart. I keep on seeing this one across the lands and it's so goddamn awful. In fact, on this channel, we called a top on this one, not on the actual top, but 1 month after that, that was July. We said, hey, this thing is done. This thing is fucking done. And well, from there to where it's at right now, only 78.25% down. So I'm wrong. Anyways. Bro, why no nuke button for Neo? Just because I wasn't as autistically raged about that one as I am this one from the spamming. Anyways, Caspa, please, for Neo Dag. Neo Dag, okay. Caspa. Caspa, also, not on TradingView? This one should be on TradingView, right? Yeah, okay, there it is. All right, I don't know why that was going on like that. Similar to a lot of the ones that we've seen today. Again, I really do think that we've seen all-time high for a very, very long time, certainly for this cycle, already put in there. But like most things, it's in a bounce phase. And I do think that you extend this bounce a little bit more, at least towards 11 to 11.5 cents. If you can start to close and reclaim this region at, let's just call it 11.5 cents, which is basically the LARP line as well. What are you mad about? Then maybe this thing guns for like 14, 15 cents. But look, I ain't calling a reversal to new all-time highs or anything like this, man. Overall, long-term, yeah, this looks like a very long-term top to me, if not a life top. So yeah, thoughts on Fartcoin from a day time frame perspective. I see some bearish divergences forming. Let's see. We did look at it earlier, to be fair, but bearish divergences. Yes, you're right. There are bearish divergences forming right here. So, like I said with Fartcoin earlier, do I think it could maybe make one more slightly new high around like 1.25, maybe even as much as like 129? Possible, yes, but I think that this thing's putting in like a major high relatively soon. And you are 100% right. There is potential for a bearish divergence here, but it won't be confirmed until this thing comes back down below Thursday's low and preferably closes below there. And then, yeah, you could probably get a pretty decent correction sub $1. So yeah. All right, cool. Crypto Bro again. All right, we'll stay on for one last one for Crypto Bro. I was actually literally just about to shut it off, but he snuck in there. Can you do INJ on the weekly for Steve Dude? Yeah, sure, man. Get some Twitter action going on over here. All right, Steve Dude. Long term, don't like it. Short term, like most things, I think you're going to bounce a bit more. I think that this thing will at least get around like 12, 13 bucks. I think in a more agreeable scenario, it'll get all the way up to like $18. But long term, at least it does have new all-time highs. But one thing before the next, I'd like to see something like that. Just what do you use for the nuke effect? It's just Streamlabs, man. No, I'm dropping an actual nuke, actually. In fact, it's a real nuclear bomb, man. It's crazy that they let me have it. Yeah, I mean, it's just a what's it called? A GIF. Or actually, one of my friends made it, but he made it into like a GIF type thing, and so I like to use it. Yeah. All right, sweet. All right, guys, I think we're gonna shut it off there. It's been an absolute pleasure again on this nice little Friday morning. We'll be back on with another live stream analysis on Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. And until then, we'll continue with the just daily regular videos, which will be live streamed on Twitter. And other than that, I just want to say a massive thank you for everyone joining in, making this a nice, fun, and eventful live stream. Of course, want to apologize if I offended anyone out there. It's all in good fun. It's all in good jest. I'm only talking about charts here. I'm not talking about people. But yeah, some charts are really, really shitty. Anyways, with all of that said, I want to wish you the best. Take